Hi, guys. Welcome to Parawomenradio. I'm Amy. During my interview with Lindsay Valandry, a former inmate turned sober coach who served time at the same Florida prison where Sarah Paulson Boone currently resides, we touched slightly on the dark world of her inmate neighbors, the cases on death row, and the notorious reputation of Lowell Prison in Florida. Tonight, we go even further and uncover the dangerous inmates living near Sarah Boone and the scandalous events that have unfolded within the prison walls. Do you remember Dahlia Polito, who plotted to have her live-in boyfriend red rummed by her undercover police officer? By an undercover police officer, or Amelia Carr, once the youngest woman on death row until her sentence was commuted to life. Carr kidnapped and unalived her boyfriend's wife. Also, did you know Lowell Prison is reported to be hell on earth? Why, you say? Oh, well, bad water, attacks by guards, and more. These are just a few of the chilling stories that have emerged from Lowell Prison that we will be covering tonight. I'm going to roll some credits. And we're going to dive into tonight's topic, which is Sarah Boone and her new residents and scary neighbors on this episode of Parawoman Radio. Be sure to give this live a thumbs up. Helps me go out into the algorithm party out there. Bring more people back to the party. It's just a free way to help. I am eternally grateful that I am not at Lowell Prison tonight. After researching it, woo, you guys, it does sound like it is hell on earth. Not a place that I would want to be. But I can't help but think, Sarah Boone, congratulations, my friend. You did this to yourself. This is all you're doing. If Sarah Boone hadn't done what she had done, I don't think she would have ended up at Lowell. Well, I mean, obviously, what I'm talking about, what she did was horrific, truly horrific. But her display in court, I think, earned her what she has gotten where she is. When Lindsay was on, I named a number of women being on death row, saying, "Oh my gosh, there's so many women on death row." There's not. Those were past women on death row that I was naming off. So they were women that had been on Florida death row, but were either put to death or taken off death row and put into a life sentence. Currently, there's only 3 women on death row, and we're going to look at them. But yeah, so I really apologize. Also, I think I said that the prison had internet, and they're not. Well, to me, internet, you can email them. They can do apps they get tablets. They can do apps on their tablet. I mean, it's internet, but it's limited internet, but technically it's not internet. So they don't have internet. But they have tablets that they have, they can do learning apps on, different apps, and then they can email. So, I mean, there's apps on their tablet, but so it's a limited type deal. So those were the corrections that I really wanted to make sure that you guys knew about, because I don't want misinformation out there. I think she might just get worse. She seems pretty inhumane. Yeah, that closing spectacle that she did was quite the little cherry on top of her sundae of spectacles. So past and present, here are all the women who have been sentenced to death row in Florida. And death row is housed in the same prison that Sarah Boone will be in. Obviously not on the same unit, but it is in the same. It's at the Lowell Correctional. So here are some of the women that have been there. Women who have received the death penalty in Florida. There was Berta Hall in 1929, 23-year-old Bertha Hall and Gordon Denmark, 22, were sentenced on October 9th, 1926 to the electric chair for unaliving her grocer husband. There was Billy Jackson. She was sentenced in Duval County on February 1st, 1927 for the piercing death of her musician husband, Governor Martin. Commuted her sentence 7 months later, and she was released in 1935 or 1936. So there was Ruby McCollum, Irene Laverne Jackson, Maria Dean Arrington, Sonia Jacobs, Casey B. Dudley, Carla Collier, D. Castillo, Deidre Hunt, Andrea Hicks, Virginia Larzillier. Some women who have been executed was Judius Goodyear Bonanno. Sorry for the butchering. Aileen Warnos. She was very popular, serial killer. Aileen is a well-known serial killer who was implicated in the deaths of several men in Florida. She was ultimately sentenced from Volusia County on January 31st, 1992. On the December 1st, 1989 shooting of a Clearwater businessman, she was executed on October 9th, 2002. There was Tiffany Cole, Margaret Allen, Tina Brown, and we're going to take a look at a few of these women more in depth. These are the three women who are still on Florida's death row. Tina Brown of Pensacola is on death row for murdering her neighbor. And yes, I have to say these weird words because YouTube doesn't like certain words, which I live for a day where I can just say what I would need to say on YouTube, but that day isn't here yet. So Tina Brown of Pensacola is on death row for murdering her neighbor. Tina Brown, 52, arrived on death row in October 2013 for the brutal murder of her neighbor, 19-year-old Audrina Zimmerman. Brown, with help from a friend and her then 16-year-old daughter, Brittany Miller, ambushed Zimmerman in a trailer, attacked her repeatedly with a stun gun, gagged her, stuffed her in the trunk of a car, drove her into the woods, beat her with a crowbar, doused her with gasoline, set her on fire, and left her to die. Tiffany Cole of Jacksonville, she's on death row for murdering an elderly couple. Tiffany Cole, 41, was sentenced to death on March 6, 2008 in Duval County after being convicted in July 2005 kidnappings and murders of James and Carol Summer in Jacksonville. Cole's one of the four people who kidnapped Carol and Reggie Summer, both 61, from their St. Nicholas home in 2005 and drove them to Carlton County, Georgia, where they were buried alive. She is currently on death row at Lowell Correctional Institute. Here's a quick video of the three women that I mentioned. We didn't read the third one, but she's mentioned in this one.
Prosecution pursues the death penalty. The sentence is decided by the jury and must be unanimous. In case of a hung jury during the penalty phase of the trial, a life sentence is issued, even if a single juror.
I feel like somebody asked, can they jailbreak the tablet and get internet, or would she have to get a contraband cell phone? I feel like with them not being able to have the internet, I know there's a way you can block the internet. I don't know. I feel like there's always a way if you get a computer geek in there that they'll know how to do something. But I think Sarah Boone will more than likely have to do the cell phone route. I don't think she doesn't strike me as an internet geek, but who knows? That is a good question.
Post-death, there is no retrial. Prior to 2014, the judge decided the sentence alone, and the jury gave only a non-binding advice. In March 2014, the Florida legislature provided a 10-juror supermajority to issue a sentence of death. This was also challenged and
I did some reading on death row in Florida, and apparently Florida is like going down on their executions. The public support for executions has gone way down, and Florida is leading the charge and releasing people into life sentences.
In October 2014, the Florida Supreme Court struck down the law, finding that death sentences can only be handed down by a unanimous jury. In Florida, murder can be punished by death if it involves one of the next aggravating factors. It was committed by a person previously convicted of a felony and under sentence of imprisonment, placed on community control, or on felony probation. The defendant was previously convicted of another capital felony or of a felony involving the use or threat of violence to the person.
It is very rare, and a lot of them are getting commuted to life sentences. So we're going to look at one of them. The youngest female prisoner on death row was commuted over to life. We've got a few that we're going to go in depth and look at. There's like 5 of them that we're going to look at.
The defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons. It was committed while the defendant was engaged, or was an accomplice, in the commission of, or an attempt to commit a specified felony, such as aggravated child abuse, arson, kidnapping.
They're saying that in order to be on death row, it has to be a unanimous type deal.
Currently on Florida death row. These are their names and crime committed. Tiffany Ann Cole. She was born December 3, 1981, in South Carolina. In early July 2005, Tiffany Cole, Michael Jackson, and 2 other men, Alan Wade and Bruce Nixon, drove to the Sumners' home. The Sumners were a former neighbor of Tiffany. The Sumners in many occasions helped Tiffany financially.
So this was the elderly couple that I just read, that Tiffany unalived, that she did with her boyfriend.
Nixon willingly led police to the Sumners' grave, revealing that both victims had managed to free themselves of their bonds, but could only manage to hug each other in their final moments before they died. At Tiffany Cole's week-long trial in October 2000.
I can't think of a much more horrific way. Well, I mean, what Sarah did was horrific, but burying someone alive, because Sarah basically buried George alive in that suitcase, didn't she? Ugh.
7. The jury deliberated for less than 90 minutes before finding her guilty of first-degree murder. They voted 9-3 that she should receive the death penalty. Evidence included photos of Tiffany Cole and 2 co-defendants in a limousine, celebrating with champagne and handfuls of cash. In 2010, Cole's petition to the United States Supreme Court for a writ of certiorari was denied. In 2017, the Florida Supreme Court ordered new sentencing hearings for Cole, Wade, and Jackson, because their juries had not unanimously recommended the death penalty. A 2016 U.S. Supreme Court ruling, Hurst versus Florida, found that Florida's
Sam says her score on the hair psychopathy checklist is identical to Jeffrey Dahmer, slightly less than Eileen Wuornos, far less than Ted Bundy, and equal to John Wayne Gacy. Where is this? Sam, where is this? Because I would love to take a look at that. Wow. Yeah, that's terrifying. But believable after the performance she put on. I mean, I don't even think it's a performance. I think what she did is who she truly is. And yeah, I mean, she did us all a favor probably by earning herself life in prison instead of 15 years because we're much safer for it. But what an idiot.
Higher law permitting non-unanimous jury verdicts in death penalty. Margaret Ann Allen, born on January 23rd,
So this is the next person that is on death row.
Margaret Ann Allen, born on January 23rd, 1966. In February 12, 2005, a housekeeper in Brevard County had household chemicals, including bleach, poured down her throat, was strangled and then buried in a shallow grave over some missing money. Titusville police received information that a body was buried in an unmarked grave somewhere off State Road 46. When investigators began questioning people, they learned that Wenda Wright, who was a housekeeper for Margaret Allen at 415 South Robbins Avenue, had allegedly been killed in the house and transported to some nearby woods. Chemicals were poured into her mouth. Duct tape was placed over her mouth, so this was not a fast death. It was a tortuous death, unfortunately. Allen told investigators that she killed Wright because she thought Wright had stolen her purse containing $2,000. When Wright would not admit to taking the purse, Allen became enraged and started beating Wright. Allen's son, Quentin, helped hold the woman down as Margaret Allen allegedly poured chemicals down her throat. Margaret Allen and son then allegedly strangled her with a belt. After questioning Quentin Allen, he reportedly revealed to police the approximate location of Wright's body. James Martin was also arrested and charged with accessory after the fact. It is believed that Martin helped bring Wright's body out to a remote area. All three were arrested and transported to the Brevard County Jail.
So it takes quite a bit of brutality to earn your way on death row, I would say.
And traumatic brain injuries. Dr. Joseph Wood testified that her brain injuries would make it difficult for Allen to conform her conduct to cultural expectations.
So she obviously tried to say that she had some brain injuries that made her do it. So this is the third person that is on death row.
1970. Tina Brown was convicted of beating 19-year-old Audrina Zimmerman with a crowbar, shocking her with a stun gun, and then setting her on fire in Brown's family home. Brown's daughter Brittany Miller, then 16, told the judge at her own trial that the plan was to fight Zimmerman, but it escalated out of control. The attack was said to be the result of a disagreement over a man. After beating her and using the stun gun, the trio put Zimmerman in the trunk of a car, drove her to a wooded area, doused her with gasoline and set her on fire. Zimmerman was able to run to a nearby home and call 911, with severe burns across 60% of her body. She died 2 weeks later. Brown, her daughter, Brittany Miller, then 16, and neighbor Heather Lee, attacked Zimmerman in Brown's Ensley home in 2010. Lee testified against Brown during the trial, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Miller was sentenced to life in prison without parole in 2013 for her role in the attack.
Who are going to be her neighbors? Who are some of the other well-known cases that are known to be hanging out at Lowell? So, of course, I had to head over to Reddit because Reddit is one of my favorite places to go. You found it on the internet? Okay, I'll have to take a look and see if I can find it on my own. So this person says, I just noticed Sarah is in the same reception center as Lori Shaver. So I was like, Lori Shaver? Who is Lori Shaver? And so this is Lori Shaver. She's at the Florida Reception Center. She's sentenced to life. So chances are Sarah Boone and Lori will be hanging out. I had to go and take a look and see what this case was all about. And here is a little bit about Lori. So this was Florida versus Lori Shaver. buried in the backyard murder trial. A Florida woman was sentenced to life in prison for murdering her husband, who was found buried in her backyard. In September, a jury deliberated for a little less than 4 hours in the trial of Lori Shaver before convicting her of second-degree murder in the November 15 fatal shooting of Michael Shaver. Prosecutors argued Lori buried Michael's remains in the backyard of their Claremont home and then impersonated him in texts and Facebook messages to create the impression he was still alive. Michael's body was found in March 2018, 3 feet below ground under a concrete slab and fire pit that Lori installed in the backyard 2 years prior. Lori was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and accessory after the fact in September 2020. She was out on bond while awaiting trial. During pretrial proceedings, Lori's defense claimed her daughter, who was 8 years old at the time, pulled the trigger and unalived her father during a violent episode to protect her mother. Interesting. She pulled out her daughter. Do you think Sarah would have pulled out her son if her son had been spending the night that night? Would she have blamed it on her son? Somehow talked him into getting into it, and she went to bed and didn't know anything about it. I could see that happening. Anyway, during pretrial proceedings, Lori's defense claimed, the Shavers were living together but dating other people when Michael went missing. Lori's defense wanted to present evidence that Michael allegedly subjected Lori to years of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. Lori's defense claimed in court documents that their 2 children witnessed much of the physical abuse, including an alleged incident on the day Michael was last seen alive that led their daughter to unalive her father. So she received life.
Also breaking at this hour, the woman who killed her husband and then buried his body in their backyard will spend the rest of her life in prison. Lori Shaver was just sentenced this afternoon. Fox 35's Marie Ettinger was in the courtroom and joins us live with that story. So, Marie, how did she react?
She actually smiled when the sentence came down, but throughout today's hearing, she was making a number of faces, kind of sneering at some points. Her attorney had asked for the minimum possible sentence of 25 years, arguing that she had suffered from domestic abuse in the past. But the judge heard that and went the opposite direction anyway.
The court hereby sentences you to a term of life in the Florida Department of Corrections.
Lori Shaver will be spending the rest of her life in prison after being convicted of second-degree murder. Prosecutors say she killed her ex-husband, Michael Shaver, impersonated him for months, buried him in the backyard, built a concrete slab over the burial site, and then blamed her own daughter for the killing.
He explained to us it is life, so she will not get out early.
Brian Shaver told the judge his brother's killer, Lori Shaver, now Lori Filmer, left an immeasurable void in their lives.
Michael got life, and she did too.
2 of Michael Shaver's friends also wrote impact statements for the state attorney's office to read aloud. One of them wrote a plea to the judge, asking for Lori Shaver to never be returned to society.
Lori's inhuman.
And we know that in Florida, indeed, life is life. And we do see here that she's at the Florida Reception Center. That's where Sarah Boone is at. Sarah's at the Florida Reception Center. We can see here she is at the Sarah Boone at the Florida Reception Center. This person over on Reddit, puts the question, this person says, I keep checking Lori's status to see if she gets her prison of choice. And then this person says, if they are both in reception area, both in for murder 2 and not in solitary, will they be having a chance to eat together or go out in the yard for a walk around the place together? And we do know that Lindsay said that there is, you do go out to eat. You don't sit in a pod or anything like that. There is a place where you go and eat. So chances are they probably are seeing each other. But also it's like wham bam thank you ma'am type of eating. You don't go in and you don't leisurely eat. It's like go in, scarf it down, and get out and move on, like 5 minutes. So she's, probably not, socializing while they're eating, but if they're hanging out they're charged for the same thing, they probably are commiserating together. Wouldn't you think they would be? I would. But we also still don't know exactly what, when we were looking at the Lowell Correctional, I would like to know what building she's in. I'm that nosy. I want to know where Sarah Boone is hanging out. So maybe one day we'll get to that point. But yeah, so that is one person that Sarah Boone is more than likely hanging out with. Here is another person that I discovered just before. This was something that I found just before I came on. This person was, remember her? She was on, this is Rebecca Fenton, and she was on, what's his, Pierce Bronson? Remember her?
Interesting part that stood out to me was that there was a lot of circumstantial evidence collected at the time, but not enough to arrest Rebecca until 5 years after her husband's passing. They arrested her, and she was also sentenced to life. Let's look at a clip of the interview.
She's in Lowell, and she's sentenced to life, just like Sarah Boone.
This area where the interviews.
No, she's been in there for a while, so I could see this woman being Queen Bee, because I do remember Pierce saying that she was one of the most terrifying interviews that he's ever had.
Conducted looks like the visitors area where you can come and visit someone,
which is interesting. Here's another quick peek that we can look at. This is being filmed in Lowell Correctional at the visitor center. So
little windows. So I just thought we could pause and take the full interview in the description if you're interested in watching it. There was a lot of
So this is another woman. I remember watching this case on the case files. Like I did anyone ever remember when cable was a thing? Everyone had cable, and there was that IG channel, and just all the case files. And I remember hers being on the case file. And again, she's another person that's in there for life. So yeah. Let's keep going. Here we have, sorry, wrong one. This was the youngest woman on death row, EmiliaCarr. She was convicted of first-degree murder in 2009. But I think what happened with her was because there was that law that came by where you couldn't put a person under 17, I think, on death row, or they had to be reevaluated or something, and they all came up, all these underage juvenile cases either were commuted to life, or even the ones that were put on life had to be looked at and decided if they were going to get a lesser sentence, because you could no longer convict a juvenile of life. Or I don't know, this was 10 years ago. I don't know if they've amended it, but I remember when that was all happening. And this is when this happened for her. EmiliaCarr, once Marion County's only female death row inmate, will now spend the rest of her life in prison. After an evidentiary hearing May 19th, the state declined to seek a new death penalty phase, according to court records. And 5th Judicial Circuit Court Judge Willard Pope resentenced Carr, 32, to life in prison without parole. She has been fighting her death sentence since 2011. There are now only 3 women on death row. Carr placed a garbage bag a Marion County jury in 2010 found Carr guilty as charged of kidnapping and first-degree murder in the 2009 death of 26-year-old Heather Strong. Carr and her boyfriend, co-defendant Joshua Fulgham, 35, lured his estranged wife, Strong, to a storage trailer in Boardman in North Marion County. When Carr arrived, Strong tried to leave and a scuffle ensued. Fulgham held Strong down as Carr taped her to a chair. Fulgham then forced Strong to sign a document that gave him custody of their 2 children. Carr placed a garbage bag over Strong's head, and Fulgham held it tight and wrapped tape around his wife's neck. Carr tried twice to break Strong's neck. Carr said Fulgham then put his hands over Strong's nose and mouth and suffocated her. Strong's body was found near the trailer 4 days later. The jury voted 7-5 to recommend death for Carr. Fulgham was sentenced to life in 2012 with a vote of 8-4. Carr appealed her sentence, raising several issues, including possible errors by the trial judge and the proportionality of the death sentence. In 2015, the Florida Supreme affirmed Carr's death sentence. This case involves a love triangle between the victim, Heather Strong, her estranged husband, Joshua Fulgham, and the defendant, EmiliaCarr, that ended when Carr and Fulgham carried out their plan to unalive Strong, the High Court wrote in its decision. But ultimately, it's been commuted to life. So this is another person that probably is spending time with good old Sarah Boone.
The rain, it talks to